ball?
Thank you.
I think that okay.
I might have a pen that you can use.
I guess that should be okay. Um,
Yes, I'm listening.
if I get too excited and you feel like I'm going too fast, you just so stood out. Maybe just look at you and if I'm going too fast, let me know.
We'll just yell at you.
You in the back are still getting your lunch, please feel free to do that. There's some seats up front here. Welcome to the first event of the Authors at HCC series, sponsored by the Holyoke Community College Library. My name is Kathleen McDonough. I'm your Mistress of Ceremonies. I'm a librarian at the library, as many of you know, because I see very many familiar faces here, which is great. The Holyoke Community College Library sponsors this series so that we can acknowledge and celebrate those authors who are among us. And today we are very lucky to have Pierre with us. And before I turn this event over to Idelia Smith for some comments, I would also like to remind you that we have a couple of other series coming up on, my glasses on here. On Thursday, November 8th, we have Elise Tripp, who will be here in Kittredge Center 303, speaking on surviving Iraq soldiers' stories. And then we have Diane Beers here on Tuesday, the 4th of December at 2:30 in Frost 309. And she will be speaking about her work for the prevention of cruelty, the history and legacy of animal rights activism in the United States. So at this time, I would like to have Idelia Smith, Director of Academic Administration, come up for a minute and speak to us about the author series. Thank you.
See, aren't we lucky today? Not only do we get to come and grow our brain cells, we get to have free lunch. Yay! Isn't that nice? Yeah, someone knows that this is a nice thing to do. Because I remember when I was a student in college, from time to time they would put on something nice for us and we would have free lunch. And mostly we were just interested in the free lunch. But from time to time we also learned something, and it was amazing. In this instance, our wonderful library has done something extraordinary. They've put together a series of presentations that will be done by people who actually work here, who have authored books. And make no mistake, this is a big deal, because those of you who are writing papers now, how many of you are writing papers now? Suffering. So can you imagine writing a book and having it published? This is very important work, and it's extraordinary, and we're really here to celebrate our authors. I'm especially delighted to be the person to be on the dais when Pierre is speaking, because he's known to me, and he was a Robert Evans Fellow, which makes it especially wonderful. And so I hope that you will, first of all, enjoy this moment, and also partake of the additional programming that the library is going to do for us, so that we have the opportunity to really broaden our horizons, grow some brain cells, and just celebrate the authors among us, because it's so important that we do that. That's what we are here. This is an intellectual enterprise. Even though you're suffering and you're writing those papers, this is all about acquiring an education and becoming an educated person. And it means so much more than just taking the class. I think that at this point in even my life here, the number of opportunities that we have to celebrate intellect and these endeavors has just, it's expanded extraordinarily. And this is one of the many things that you can do here. So first, allow me to thank the library staff. Our librarians are a marvel, for doing this for us, so thank them. Clap. Yay! And then when our speaker finishes, you will clap again, of course, because he's wonderful. But do partake of this. This is a wonderful affair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Idelia, for that nice introduction to our series. I would like to ask our Director of Academic Support, let me just check that I said that correctly, Paulette Dalps, to come up to the podium here, and she will be the one honored to introduce our speaker.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. Please feel free to enjoy your meal as we continue on with our program. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you in particular to the faculty that have brought your classes here. I'm excited to see that, so thank you for doing that. So I have the honor today of presenting to you our wonderful author, Pierre Aurelis. Pierre was born in and grew up in Haiti. And his father was a carpenter, and his mother worked buying and selling wares under very difficult conditions, characteristic of the majority of poor working women in Haiti. Pierre is the first person in his family to graduate from high school and to attend college. He completed his bachelor's and master's degree from UMass Boston. He taught high school in Boston prior to becoming a doctoral student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Throughout his years as a student, many of you may relate to this, throughout his years as a student in Haiti, Pierre regularly challenged the educational system and its leaders. He participated in many student protests, arguing for fair educational practices, fair leadership, and important curricular changes that transformed what was known as the status quo, and he argued to abolish colonial imperialism in the educational system. If some of those words didn't make a lot of sense, or that sentence didn't make a lot of sense, it's important for you to pick up his book, because he describes in detail his story, his journey, his awarenesses, first not knowing and understanding how the system in Haiti and the colonialism that had taken over Haiti suppressed and oppressed his access to education, fair economic practices, and other institutions in Haiti. Not unlike many of the countries, unfortunately, that places such as the United States have colonized and taken over. But his story is a personal story, and I think it's a story that many of us can relate to. And if you can't relate to it, all the more important that you pick up his book and read it. Pierre came to us as a Robert Evans Fellow, as Idelia Smith mentioned, and a Robert Evans Fellow are students of color who are graduate students, who we fund to work here at the college, to be connected here, and hopefully to move forward in some of their goals. In Pierre's experience, his goal was to become a faculty member, an adjunct faculty member at ESL. And it was in just a short time that he, in fact, became an adjunct faculty member in ESL, while at the same time working in our Center for Academic Program Support as a learning coach and as a tutor for ESL. And one of the things that I think is powerful about Pierre and who he is that he puts into practice those things that he was arguing for while he was getting educated or struggling for a fair education in Haiti. And those things are a gentle and kind and incredibly dedicated commitment to fair access and educational enrichment for all students. So Pierre on a daily basis sits in our learning center and works one-on-one with our students and helps to support them obtaining some of their educational goals, and in particular to gain some of the academic skills that they've been unable to get access to prior to coming here to Holyoke Community College. And so I always love to watch Pierre and his work. Pierre speaks 4 languages. He speaks Haitian Creole, French, English, and Spanish. He is an amazingly dedicated and, how can I say this, talented and committed teacher. And he wants students to succeed, and he embodies that in every action that he takes as he's worked here at HCC. In his book, Pierre asks us to imagine many things. For example, in a poem he has written, in one stanza he asks, Imagine a country from which you hold your most cherished memories, where your friends and family live, but which you hope to leave soon because of poverty, violence, and abuse of human rights. It is Pierre's belief that through critical reflection, people develop critical consciousness, which in turn might empower them to take action against inequality. I'm excited that Pierre is here in our presence on a regular basis at HCC, and most importantly that he is here today to share with you some of his work. Please join me in welcoming Pierre.
But I don't think I need to. I don't think I need to give the talk because Paulette already did it for me. So you can just go back to your class. First, I would like to thank you all for being here. I know there are other places where you could have chosen to be, but instead you choose to be here for me. So I really appreciate your presence. I would like to thank Idelia, Camille. I have a long list here. I won't need the mic. I would like to thank Idelia for being the first person who told me that she would try to bring me here to talk about my book. I also want to thank Camille, who is sitting in the back. She's been working very hard to make this possible. Of course, it wasn't only Camille. There were other folks who did work hard to make this event possible. There are Kathleen Moore, Kathleen McDonald, who was here. I don't know if she's still, okay, she's in the back. And Vivian, you most know Vivian if you're taking ESL or reading and writing. Jack, and the library staff. I know there are a lot of people who work behind the scenes to make this event possible. And of course, I must thank two teachers who decided to bring their classes here. Ed, if you are somewhere, Ed and Lisa, who promised me that they would bring their classes here. So I'm sure you kept your promise, so thank you so much. And I also want to thank Joyce, who was the first person who actually welcomed me. I would be ungrateful if I don't thank my students. Some of my students who tried to maybe skip their class to be here. So thank you so much for being here. And finally, but not least, I would like to thank my colleagues in the Writing Center, and the CAP Center, and the Math Center, and the ESL department who been really supportive of me. And of course the school that opened its door to me to talk about my book. Before I share some part of the book with you, which is the part of my being here, I would like to clarify one term that I use throughout the book. The word is Western. So in opposition to the word Western, I use the word Western. So I will be saying Western countries. So when I say Western countries, I'm referring to countries that used to be called third world countries. I don't like the word third world. It's too demeaning. So, and I also use the word the rest. So by the rest, I mean countries that were colonized, that are neo-colonized, and even occupied. Countries in Africa, in South Central America, in the Caribbean, and the Middle East, and India, and some part of Eastern Europe. So, and finally, one thing that I want to mention is that in the first chapter of the book, as Paulette mentioned earlier, I use my personal life, I use my schooling experience, my struggles growing up in Haiti. I chose to do that because I believe a writer has the duty to make his or her reading human, or real to the reader. So in order to make my reading, in order to make my words feel human to you, I figured I would share some of my struggles with you. But this is not a biography book. I mean, I haven't lived long enough to write a biography, but I will do it soon. So I don't want you to think that it's my biography. It's not. There's a lot more about my life than here. So, having said that, I would like to begin by reading a poem that I wrote, and then that I use in the first chapter of the book. I call the poem Imagine a Country. So in the poem I describe some issues that do not get to discuss in school. whatever reason, that do not get to talk in the mainstream media. For those who cannot relate to the poem because their life experience has been different, and I'm hoping that, however, it will resonate to them somehow, or force them to reflect on their own privileges. Because some people, they were brought up in a family where millions of, tons of privileges were only waiting for them, but they didn't have to work hard. So I call that unearned privileges. Some people had to work hard to earn certain things. So for those who work very hard, I'm hoping somehow they will, the content of the poem will push them to think critically, because it's my belief that through critical reflection, people can develop critical awareness, which might push them to take action against inequalities that all of us have been a victim of. So I call this poem Imagine a Country. Imagine a country where you were born and grew up, that has approximately 85% of its people who don't know how to read and write, where the school system is still operating among the debris of colonialism. Imagine a country where young, beautiful women are the sexual objects of men, especially wealthy men, where young girls are sexually harassed, raped, and beaten by these men, where being a man is defined as having 3 or more women to treat as second-class citizens. Imagine a country where women are overworked and underpaid and for own factories, where they produce brand clothes and shoes like Nike for 30 cents per hour, and yet do not earn enough money to feed themselves and their families. Imagine a country from which you hold your most cherished memories, where your friends and family live, but which you hope to leave soon because of poverty, violence, abuse of human rights. Finally, imagine a country where you are fearful and feeling unsafe because your political stance and ideology are taken as too subversive, where challenging the status quo equates to being a traitor, unpatriotic. Imagine. Like many people in the Western world, I don't have to imagine the obvious scene that I just described throughout the poem. Growing up in the poorest, neo-colonized country in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti, I personally experienced and witnessed some of these scenes, which might be the reality of many children in the Caribbean. Given my social class background, I was not expected to go to and finish high school, let alone to go to college and attend graduate school. Instead, like some of my neighbors, I was expected to follow my father's footsteps to becoming a carpenter, or as a poor farmer was forced to sell his labor to a grandon. Grandons are people in Haiti who own a lot of lands and other assets. Or alternatively, I could have become a soldier, like my father at some point wished for me. Or, like thousands of young Haitians, I could have become a Totomakut, the Duvalier private army who tortured people who spoke against the Duvalier regime. Out of hundreds of people with whom I grew up, I was one of the few who made it through high school, to which millions of poor Caribbean children don't have access. In fact, in some rural areas, including the ones that I spent part of my childhood, attending enough school to learn the basic and reading skills remains a dream for many Caribbean children. Some of the children had to work long hours on farms owned by power brokers who stole land from the poor peasants who could not afford to send their children to the local school. Although I'm the youngest in my family, I was the first child to graduate from high school and go to college. My older sister was supposed to graduate high school before me, but they did not make it beyond 8th grade because my father did not support the idea of investing in women's education, fearing that they would get pregnant before they graduate high school. In fact, my father was not the only man in the Caribbean at the time who had that belief. Many Caribbean fathers believe that girls should get some basic education and then stay, home to help the mother clean, to take care of their younger brothers and sisters. Although this might not reflect the reality of many middle and upper class Caribbean women, it remains a fact that sexism affects most, if not all, Caribbean women, and also women in the US and elsewhere. When I graduated high school at the age of 22, it was a dream come true for my semi-illiterate mother, who sacrificed everything to support me throughout high school. I remember how proud she was to tell her friends, and I quote, "My son just graduated from high school," and unquote. However, this concept of college was foreign to my mother, who did not go beyond 6th grade. When I told her that I was applying for college, she replied, and I quote, "I thought you were done with school, my son. When will you be done with school so that you can get me a job? Or so that you can get a job to help me?" And unquote. Although disappointed that I was not done yet with school, my mother continued supporting me through college, hoping that I would find a job after I graduated. Unfortunately, I never got a job like my mother had hoped until after I left Haiti. My high school and college years within a neo-colonial school system were shadowed by political turmoil that paralyzed the whole country. However, until I became politically aware of this, I live an innocent, naive, and laissez-faire lifestyle in my native country. I did not realize to what extent this country was devastated by internal divisions among leaders who were fighting for power. Nor did I realize that it was also economically, politically destroyed by manipulation coming from the West, meaning from the US, from Canada, and France. The reason I was able to live such an innocent and naive life was that I did not have the political awareness and consciousness to question what I was thought to be normal, what I was thought to be the truth. Until I started to question the order of things, I was regarded and treated as a good boy. That is, obedient, smart, and polite. However, when I started asking pertinent questions, my high school teachers, my classmates, and close friends started calling me, "You are a rebel. You are a confused boy." In school, my classmates and I were not expected to ask independent-minded questions that would oblige our teachers to tell us the truth or challenge them to help us answer the following questions. 1. Why do students living in formerly colonized countries have to use textbooks and colonial masterpieces whose content is culturally and historically alienating to them? Why are French and English the primary language of instruction in school, rather than Creole or the local dialect? Why are professors who always speak French and standard English in class are considered smart, sharp, and stylish, whereas those who dare use Creole or the local dialect are considered less smart, stupid, so on and so forth? And finally, why do farmers feel it's pointless to grow rice, beans, corn, and to grow rice, corn, and beans because of an overflow of these products in the native land imported from the West? Spending about 2 years in college in my native land did not enable me to develop a critical mind so that I could answer the question I just posed. My colonial-based system did not enable me either to understand the Western cultural, political, and economic assault against the Western world. Furthermore, my high school and college experiences within a colonial-based school system did not teach me that growing up in an uneducated and poor family should not dictate one's destiny. Nor these experiences teach me that being poor should not prevent one from questioning why Western countries have been put in a political and economic situations where they always have to rely on the Western world for foreign aid, or worse, to borrow money from IMF and the World Bank with exorbitant interest rates. Nor did my high school diploma and my 2 semesters at the Asian State University equip me with the necessary critical and political consciousness skills to understand why farmers, why factory workers work long hours making shirts, pants, jackets, shoes, baseball, and football equipment for corporate capitalist interests while they could not feed or clothe their children, let alone send them to school. Noam Chomsky, one of the prominent critical thinkers, have been talking about how US-owned factories in Haiti have been exploiting women. And in one of his analyses, he stated, and I quote, foreign-owned foreign-owned assembly plants that employ workers, mostly women, are well below subsistence, pay under horrendous working conditions, benefit from cheap electricity, subsidized by the general supervisor. But for the Haitian poor, the general population, there can be no subsidies for electricity, fuel, water, or food. These are prohibited by IMF rules on the principal grounds that they constitute price control. And unquote. What Chauncey described in this quote reflects the sad reality of my neighbors and relatives. I remember my neighbors and relatives having to work 10 to 12 hours a day, and yet they frequently had to borrow money from neighbors, from other neighbors and family members to feed their children and pay their bills. Selling their labor force for hours in those foreign-owned factories did not enable them to improve their working conditions. On the contrary, these conditions had gotten worse and worse from weeks to weeks until they were sent home after the closure of these assembly plants. Even though I was then a young boy, it was not hard for me to make sense of these miserable conditions. The tired and miserable looking face, combined with the sad stories about the job conditions, were the vivid testimony of the inhuman working and living conditions. Now going back to the school system of countries that were colonized, there's a point that I need to make. That is, the legacy of colonialism continues impacting the school system of those countries. Countries such as Haiti, India, Pakistan, just to name a few. For example, after 200 years of independence, the school system of Haiti continued to emulate the French style of teaching. In my native land, when I was in high school, everything was done in French. The textbooks that I had to use in class were in French. As a result, a great number of Haitian students, myself included, felt linguistically and culturally homeless because there was no connection between what I was reading in those textbooks and my culture. In fact, as a high school student, I always felt culturally and historically alienated, reading stories in these textbooks, whose cultural and historical baggage was irrelevant to my lived experience. This is well captured by Kant, who eloquently argues, and I quote, "When students see neither themselves nor their history reflected in their education, disengagement understandably follows," and unquote. Like I observed not being able to see myself culturally and historically through school materials that I was required to use, I ended up resisting what I was learning in school. And I also had to challenge many times my high school teachers, history teachers, who would have the tendency to make me believe that French history is more glorious than the Haitian history. There was one teacher who claimed to be educated in France. He would come to class to talk about our beautiful French history with Napoleon Bonaparte, so on and so forth. And I would challenge him, what about Toussaint Louverture, who kicked Napoleon's butt, and get our independence? So I always got into a fight with this teacher. So through my high school experience in Haiti, I was only encouraged by my teachers to challenge and deconstruct the hidden ideology embedded in those French textbooks that I was using. On the contrary, what I witnessed and personal experience was that teachers were not only complacent about teaching French literature and history, but they also took pride in repeating, like parents, to students the prefabricated knowledge about these subjects. At no time did I recall my high school teachers trying to question and challenge old French values, beliefs, and ideology embedded in those texts. Consequently, Haitian students like myself included, spent years from elementary to middle school and high school absorbing information that had no meaning to our lives. In fact, information acquired from these textbooks structure set my mind to a great extent to accept passively and reproduce the false idea that France is Haiti's mother country and source of knowledge. After years of indoctrination, after years of miseducation, I became a docile reproducer of French values, beliefs, and cultural norms. For example, until I developed critical consciousness, I used to believe that the French language and literature and culture were better than the Haitian language, Haitian culture, Haitian literature. So through interaction, through social interaction, I would use French to impress my girlfriends rather than my native tongue, which is Creole. But what I was not aware of then was that, as when observed, the use, and I quote, the use of a foreign language as a medium of education make a child fluent within his or her own culture and environment. This creates a colonial alienation. What is worse, the neo-colonial subject is made to see the world and where he or she stands in it as seen and defined by or reflected in the culture of the language of imposition. This is made worse when the neo-colonial subject is exposed to images of her or his own world mirrored in the written language of his or her colonizer, where the native language, cultures, history, or people are associated with